I am Lydia. I've been married for 3 years and am a stay-at-home mom with a husband and daughter. My husband, Robert, works as an office employee. He's cool and reserved, but he works hard for our family. One day, I received an unusual phone call during his lunch break. Curious, I answered the call, assuming it must be something urgent for him to call at this time. However, what Robert said was utterly unbelievable. To uncover the truth, I visited someone, and there I discovered an unexpected and shocking revelation. On an ordinary weekday afternoon, while reading and sipping coffee, I received a call from Robert. He rarely calls during work hours, so I was surprised. Immediately after answering, Robert began saying incomprehensible things. His voice sounded lower than usual, and I sensed both anger and confusion through the phone. I couldn't grasp the meaning of what he was saying, but he continued.
Hey, so it seems you're leaving our child to my mother every weekday. What's going on?
I was taken aback by Robert's accusation. He quickly clarified that he wasn't blaming me but wanted me to listen. Apparently, my mother-in-law had called him earlier. Our apartment and her house are about an hour's drive apart, so we rarely meet. Aside from occasional family gatherings during the new year, we don't visit often. Plus, I don't have a driver's license, so I usually handle transportation, especially with our young daughter. Given this context, the idea of me going to my in-laws' place every day seemed absurd. According to my mother-in-law, I was leaving our child to her daily and going out to play. She claimed she had reached her limit and called Robert. When Robert heard this, he vehemently denied it. However, my mother-in-law had sent photos of her pushing the stroller with our baby girl or videos of her drinking milk. Robert was puzzled by these images. I also saw the forwarded photos, but something felt off. They all showed the child from behind or in profile, never showing her face clearly. None of these photos show her face directly, I pointed out. Robert quietly agreed, saying, "Yeah." Despite both of us defending our positions to my mother-in-law, the conflicting accounts left us frustrated and at a loss. I reassured him, saying, "I've never left our child at my in-laws, and she's right here with me." Robert apologized, realizing he had jumped to conclusions. After that, he fell silent. Robert must have been contemplating various thoughts, but I couldn't help wondering why my mother-in-law suddenly made such an accusation. Robert, being a kind and family-oriented person, probably didn't want to believe that his own mother was lying. However, he couldn't strongly blame me without any certainty, which might explain his half-hearted approach. "Robert, let's go to your mother's place and find out," I suggested. Robert agreed with a simple understood and hung up. Over the weekend, we headed to my in-laws' house after a long time. Although I was a bit worried about our 9-month-old daughter being in the car for an hour, she didn't fuss at all, and we arrived safely. When we pressed the intercom, hurried footsteps echoed, and the door opened. There stood my stern-faced mother-in-law. Robert said,
"Mom, we'd like a detailed explanation."
She sighed and replied,
"Honestly, Weston claims Lydia has been leaving her daughter to him, so I wanted to hear Lydia's side of the story."
Robert and I exchanged glances, both puzzled. Weston, Robert's brother, had been married but divorced within 6 months due to some trouble. Even though my interactions with my in-laws were minimal, the idea of Weston and me being connected was absurd. Robert had tried explaining this to my mother-in-law, but she remained stubborn. Still, I couldn't see her as someone who would lie. Those photos. Weston took them, right? I asked. My mother-in-law nodded. Strangely, all the photos showed my mother-in-law's arms, body, and face, clearly taken intentionally from that angle. Given the context, it was likely Weston, but as expected. I sighed, unstrapped our daughter from the baby carrier, and showed her to my mother-in-law. The last time you saw our daughter was when she was about a month old, right? It's been 9 months since then, so her appearance has changed. But this child is undeniably ours. As my mother-in-law peered at our daughter, their eyes met. Our daughter smiled, but my mother-in-law's expression tightened. Clearly, the child she had cared for looked different. Robert also didn't seem to see his mother-in-law lying, and there was silence between us. At that moment, we heard the sound of the front door opening, and someone said, "I'm home." Robert and my mother-in-law headed toward the entrance, and I peeked from the slightly open living room door. There, Weston was holding a baby who appeared to be about the same age as our child. Curious about this strange phenomenon, both my mother-in-law and Robert questioned Weston. However, Weston confidently insisted on some outrageous claims. The more we listened, the more nonsensical his statements became. Then, a shocking revelation emerged. Weston chuckled and said,
"Oh, so I've been caught."
Naturally, Robert confronted him, asking,
Why would you do such a thing?
Weston's response was unexpected.
Well, I dislike both Robert and Lydia.
While it made sense for Robert, since they're brothers, I couldn't fathom why Weston disliked me, someone he had no connection to. According to Weston, Robert's annoying habit of outperforming him at work was the reason. Interestingly, both Robert and Weston worked at the same company. Their workplace was owned by Robert's uncle, and it followed a pattern where young male family members joined, gained experience, and eventually became independent, strengthening ties between companies. However, despite Robert's rapid promotion to a managerial position, Weston remained an ordinary employee. Frustrated, Weston expressed his selfish opinions. But then, he took it a step further.
You know, Lydia, the reason I got divorced was because of you. Honestly, you're cuter than my ex-wife Anna, and she got jealous and asked for a divorce.
I had only met Anna once, so her opinion of me hardly mattered. Weston's dislike for Robert led him to concoct a plan to harass his despised brother. Suddenly, our daughter started crying, sensing the tension. As I tried to soothe her, Weston glanced at her and remarked,
Ugh, she's not cute.
That was my breaking point. I vowed to teach this incredibly rude Weston a lesson. I was ready, no more holding back. Before any of us could speak, my mother-in-law raised a crucial question.
So, whose child are you holding?
We had all wondered the same thing. Upon closer inspection, the baby's features did resemble ours. Weston's response, however, was mind-boggling.
Oh, it's my child with my ex-wife.
The shock was palpable. After all, Weston and his ex-wife had divorced 2 years ago, and this child looked about the same age as our daughter.
Weston broke up with Anna 2 years ago. Would it be strange?
Weston briefly showed panic before regaining composure.
No, right after we split, I found out she was pregnant, and, well...
But his statement had an obvious contradiction. If you knew about the pregnancy 2 years ago, the child would be around 18 months old, right? I pointed out. Weston stumbled over his words, and Robert added,
You said that Anna was married to a rich man after divorce with you.
Finally, Weston's confident facade cracked, revealing his anxiety.
Did I really say that? Ha ha ha.
His face was smiling, but his eyes darted left and right, clearly flustered. Just then, Weston's phone rang. He panicked, muttering.
I remembered Anna said she'd call later.
I swiftly snatched his phone away. Weston reached out to retrieve it, but Robert intervened. I pressed the call button, and Anna's voice came through.
Hello? Listen, my husband is coming home early today, so could you return our daughter around 4 p.m.?
She chatted away, assuming she was speaking to Weston. When I introduced myself, there was silence. After a few seconds,
Huh? Why are you there?
clearly agitated, Anna demanded an explanation. I instructed her to come over and hung up. We waited for about 30 minutes until Anna arrived. As soon as she entered the living room, she snapped at Weston.
Why did you get caught?
Weston stammered, explaining how he misunderstood Anna's pregnancy timing, given that she was now married to someone else. Anna's anger flared.
This idiot. And why did you tell your mother that Lydia's child was yours? You should have said it was your girlfriend's child.
She grabbed Weston's collar, furious at his honesty. Upon further inquiry, it turned out that Anna divorced Weston 2 years ago and remarried 6 months later. While the reason for their divorce seemed to involve me, there was another significant factor. Weston had accumulated substantial debt, making repayment impossible. So, they faked their divorce. Legally separated, Anna married a wealthy man who had been pursuing her. Despite the fake divorce, their lingering feelings remained. Anna withdrew money from her new husband's savings to help Weston repay his debts. Even after the divorce, they met frequently, and during one of those encounters, Anna became pregnant with their current child. Well, it's not entirely implausible, right? But were you planning to remarry after paying off the debt? I asked incredulously. Weston and Anna fell silent. My mother-in-law couldn't hold back.
Your actions are outright infidelity. Pay proper compensation to Anna's current husband and decide your future. And why did you push your child onto me, claiming it was Lydia's?
Weston's feeble excuse, about finding parenting difficult and wanting to hang out with friends, elicited collective sighs. Suddenly, Robert interjected.
So what about you and your current girlfriend?
Anna hesitated, saying,
Well, that's just another excuse.
but I noticed Weston's pained expression. Anna, judging by Weston's reaction, it seems like he's telling the truth, I remarked. Weston snapped back, denying everything, but Anna's face tightened. Unable to bear everyone's scrutiny, Weston tearfully confessed.
Actually, I'm dating someone I met on a dating app. She's pregnant with our child, and we plan to get married eventually.
At that moment, Anna's eyes widened, and she grabbed Weston's collar.
What? After I helped you repay your debt and even raised your child, you're impregnating another woman and planning to marry her.
The sound of a recording ending interrupted the tension. All eyes turned to Robert.
I've recorded everything just now. I'll report Weston's actions to our uncle.
As soon as Robert spoke, Weston turned even paler. Weston stammered.
Wait! That's a problem. If our uncle finds out about this, I'll be fired.
But Robert had already sent it to their uncle, leaving Weston in despair, collapsing to his knees. Anna's actions aren't blameless either, so let's not solely blame Weston, I suggested, redirecting Anna's anger toward me. Anna, now crimson with rage, pushed me and exclaimed,
Aren't you entirely at fault? Being cuter than me is your biggest sin.
Her words made little sense. Nursing my scraped knee from the push, I continued, this recent incident could be considered assault, right? My brother is a lawyer, so I'll report this to him. Excuse me for now. Anna, alarmed by the mention of a lawyer, frantically apologized. While my mother-in-law intervened to calm them down, we quickly got into the car and left the family home. Later, Robert's uncle, after watching the video, was furious and promptly fired Weston. It's a downside of running a family business. Such matters can be resolved swiftly. Additionally, my mother-in-law was livid that her son had disrupted another family and immediately contacted Anna's husband. Naturally, he was furious and divorced Anna. As for the child, Weston's child is considered Anna's husband's. He spent a significant sum hiring a top-notch lawyer, gained custody, and moved far away. Anna was saddled with substantial debt due to divorce settlements and the money previously used for Weston's debt repayment. Understandably, Weston's girlfriend chose the path of a single mother and severed ties with him. This incident prompted us to visit the family home more often, deepening our relationship. Currently, our relationship with my mother-in-law is excellent. Regarding Anna's assault, I consulted my brother, who advised,
She should reflect on her actions.
Ultimately, Anna compensated me with a few $100s in a settlement. With that money, I could buy clothes and toys for our daughter. Our worries have dissipated, and we feel refreshed. Moving forward, I hope to build a happy family with Robert, our daughter, and the son in my tummy. How was this story? Please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.
Can you lend me $150? I'll definitely pay it back.
Under the scorching 97 degrees Fahrenheit sun, my grandson arrived at our house after an hour of cycling. His face was beet red, and he looked utterly exhausted.
I need to pay my school lunch fee quickly, or I won't be able to go to school.
I glanced at my husband, seeking help, and he stood in front of our grandson with a fierce expression.
You came to borrow money from us.
My name is Sarah, and I'm 67 years old. I live with my husband Kenny, and I retired from work 7 years ago. Our only son, Max, had already grown up and left home, and we were living a somewhat mundane retired life with no particular hobbies. However, 7 years ago, during my retirement, there was one daily joy, the birth of my grandson, Martin. He was incredibly adorable, the apple of my eye. Unfortunately, that happiness lasted only a year. You see, Max's ex-wife, Jessie, was having an affair. And to make matters worse, it turns out that Martin's biological father isn't Max but Jessie's affair partner, the CEO of a major company. Despite the usual tendency for mothers to have custody, Jessie's remarriage to this wealthy man put her in a more advantageous position. To add to the unfortunate timing, Max received an overseas work assignment, leaving me with no choice but to relinquish custody of Martin. And so, separated from our grandson, we lived our days feeling purposeless. But one day, something remarkable happened that jolted us awake. It was a hot July day. My husband and I reminisced about our grandson, Martin. You know, Martin will be starting elementary school this year. Can you imagine how cute he'd look in a little suit?
Yeah, I know. But it's no use. Martin is already living with his new family.
I understand, but we were supposed to be getting ready for summer vacation by now. So that Martin can come stay with us anytime. As I looked out the window, basking in the sun's warmth, I couldn't help but wish that my grandson could share this moment with me. Just then, the doorbell rang. My husband opened the door, and his eyes widened as he stood there, momentarily speechless. Curious, I followed his gaze and found myself equally stunned. Standing before us was Martin, our long-lost grandson. His resemblance to Max, our son, was uncanny. Despite years of separation, I recognized him instantly. Jessie claimed he was the child of her affair partner, but it seems Martin's true father is Max after all. As I gazed at Martin's face, my grandson opened his small mouth.
Grandma, can you lend me $150? I promise I'll pay it back.
What do you need it for? And by the way, aren't you Martin? Why are you here?
I can't go to school unless I pay for lunch. Please help me, Grandma.
Taken aback by the sudden request, I learned that my grandson had ridden his bicycle for an hour in scorching 97 degrees Fahrenheit heat to get here. His face was flushed, and he looked utterly exhausted. We brought Martin inside the house and let him rest before hearing his story. In summary, he had enrolled in a private elementary school 3 months ago. He enjoyed going to school every day, surrounded by new friends. However, one day, Jessie, his mother and my ex-daughter-in-law, received a call from the school. It turned out that she hadn't paid for Martin's school lunches since enrolling. Jessie hung up the phone and glared at Martin with fury. I don't have money because your school lunch fees are too high. You don't need to go to school starting tomorrow. Since then, Martin believed that he could attend school if he paid for his lunches. I listened to that story with suspicion. It's hard to believe that Jessie, who remarried the CEO of a major corporation, can't afford school lunch fees. Moreover, legally, Max is Martin's father, so Jessie has been paid child support since our divorce. What's going on? Could it be that Jessie is misusing the money? My heart ached for my grandson, who was deprived of his rightful opportunity to learn and was feeling miserable. But there was another question nagging at me. Martin and I hadn't seen each other since he turned 1 year old. So, there was no way he remembered us. Why do you know me as Grandma? And how did you find this house?
Mom told me when she was drunk. She said my current dad isn't my biological father. The real dad abandoned me.
I covered my mouth with both hands and closed my eyes. It took effort, but I managed to say, "That's not true. Your dad cares deeply about you." My grandson nodded.
Yeah, I know. I found a letter from my real dad in Mom's desk drawer.
Can you read letters written by adults?
Yes. I can search for difficult words on my smartphone.
According to the grandson, the letter included Max's wish to take Martin in and his home address. It seemed that this was in anticipation of Max's overseas assignment ending in a few months. Martin seemed to have been quite hesitant about visiting us. When he thought he might be a bother, tears welled up. Such consideration doesn't quite suit our recently turned 7-year-old Martin. How did he become a child so concerned about others' opinions? It was a dream come true to reunite with our grandson, but I couldn't hold back the sadness when I saw Martin. As I reached for a tissue to wipe away the tears on Martin's cheek, my husband Kenny, who had been quietly listening, approached Martin with an intense expression.
Did you come here to borrow money from us?
I'm sorry. Maybe I shouldn't have come here after all?
Martin's face crumpled and large tears dropped to the floor. Seeing this, I tried to come between my husband and my grandson, but my husband was quicker than that to approach Martin and hug him.
If you knew, you should have turned to us sooner. We never forgot you, not even for a moment.
He must have been frustrated that his grandson was having a hard time. My husband's voice trembled with tears. Then, when Martin had calmed down a bit, I told him again that it was okay for him to stay and asked him about his life so far. Although my ex-daughter-in-law, Jessie, has not hurt Martin, she is definitely a lousy mother. She took advantage of the fact that her remarried partner Jack was busy, and not only did she not cook Martin's meals, but even when she was home, she spent most of her time on social networking sites and playing video games on her phone. She also spent a lot of time playing with other men, even inviting them to her house and inviting them into her bedroom on the worst occasions. It was during a party at home with this man that he told Martin that Jack was not his real father. And not only was she cheating on him in front of her own children, but what was most unforgivable was what she said to Martin when he found out about it. You were a tool to make me the wife of the president of the company, so you don't have to study. Can we really call her a mother now? We immediately took action because of the way my ex-daughter-in-law treated my grandson. You're not going to leave it like this, are you?
Of course not. I'm going to get back custody. Call Max right now.
In the first place, we gave custody to Jessie partly because Max was going to work overseas, but most of all because we thought she was necessary to raise Martin. However, since she was not taking care of the child properly, we could not leave Martin with her any longer. When I explained this to Max, he said, I can't leave right away, but I have an idea, and hung up the phone. The next contact I made was with my ex-daughter-in-law, Jessie, who said, I'm going to leave Martin with you for a while. I'm going to keep Martin for a while. Oh, okay. Then, please take care of him for me. I was surprised at how quickly she answered. She seemed to be neither surprised nor opposed to our son Martin staying with us, as if her current husband was on a long business trip and it was just convenient for her. Or maybe she really wasn't interested in Martin. 2 weeks later, we took Martin to visit my ex-daughter-in-law at her home. When I rang the doorbell, she appeared in a tedious manner and ushered us alone into the living room, except for Martin. Martin, go to your room. Don't you understand unless you're told every single time? Seeing Martin, whose cheerful smile he had shown us had disappeared and he had become very quiet, I felt sadness and anger toward my ex-daughter-in-law at the same time. A deep crease was clearly etched between my husband's eyebrows. Let me get straight to the point. Give our son custody right now. What? What is that? You're just taking care of Martin for 2 weeks and you're getting all worked up about it. Besides, Max is overseas, isn't he? Jessie laughed at me with a pompous attitude. She must know that once the custody is decided, it is not easy to take it back. Max will be back home soon after his overseas assignment, so there's no problem. Oh, really? I'm the one who can afford it financially, and I'm the one who can make Martin happy, so the answer is obvious, right? Right. That's why I'm asking you to give us custody. What? Are you even listening to me? That's what you are, old granny. I told Jessie, who was spitting back at me, why Martin had come to my house 2 weeks ago. How is it that you are so wealthy and don't pay for school lunches? she didn't think we knew about it, and she mumbled, "Martin, he," and then gritted her teeth. "And you're still his mother, forbidding him to go to school. He's even talking about that. Oh. That's so annoying. I told him that Max and we will raise him together. Why are you so obsessed with Martin that you have to treat him so badly?" I could hear my own voice trembling with anger. But Jessie gave a thin smile and said the impossible words. "Of course it's obvious. He's Jack's child. That's why Jack married me. You know what I mean. I needed him to be Mrs. President." This is the story I later heard. Jessie falsely claimed that Martin was Jack's child and forced him to marry her. Jack himself had wanted a successor as president of the company, and he believed it and agreed to marry her. I knew how my ex-daughter-in-law felt about Martin, but I couldn't help but feel sorry for Martin when she put it into words. The only saving grace was that Martin was in his room and was not listening to Jessie. You really do think of Martin as a tool, don't you? So what? Still, I'm his mother, so it doesn't change the fact that I have the advantage. You old people with your pensions and your spare time should stay out of it. What kind of mother are you, that when you lived with Max you were cheating on him, and now you are cheating on someone else, and in front of Martin's eyes? Jessie is clearly upset because she has hit a sore spot. You're going to be found out by your current husband before long, and you need to give custody back to Max before Martin becomes unhappy. Just as she was about to finish or not finish those words, Martin came out of the children's room.
Mom, I know you like other men more than me. I want to live with my dad at Grandma's house.
I had heard Martin's feelings before, but I had never expected my young grandson to say it himself. Jessie's eyes widened in surprise. What are you talking about, forgetting that I gave birth to you? What are you going to do if I get a divorce? If you don't tell them, they won't know, so shut up. As I was getting too much out of line, the front door opened and a certain someone walked in. It was Jessie's second marriage. It was Jack, Jessie's current husband.
I guess I wasn't Martin's father.
Hey, what are you talking about? There is no way. Martin is definitely your child.
Max told me everything. And I got an email with a picture of Max as a child, and he looks exactly like Martin. I'll give custody to Max.
My son Max, who said he had his own ideas. He didn't think his ex-wife would be easily convinced, so he reached out to Jack first. Don't be silly. That boy is your successor, remember?
You told Martin, didn't you? You told Martin that Max is the real father. If you still insist on saying it's my child, you want a DNA test.
Jessie was silent for a moment, but then her eyes suddenly lit up. Well, we can give Martin back to Max and we can have another baby. Then let's just get rid of these people and Martin.
You really think I'm an idiot, don't you? I told you Max told me everything. And that you were having an affair.
You're being deceived. There is no proof of that anywhere. I was getting numb to my ex-daughter-in-law, who was brazenly trying to cover it up to no end. At this point, I confronted her with the photos I had taken of her cheating on her husband. They showed them hugging and kissing each other in a hotel cafe, as well as the moment she brought the cheating partner into her home. Wait, when did you, how? Just like you said. We are bored old folks, it's easy enough to take pictures like this. Jessie's face turned red and she took the picture away from me. I couldn't tell if she was embarrassed or angry, but I could tell she was upset.
I'm divorcing you. Get the hell out of here.
Hey, hey. How am I going to live if you divorce me? I'm not going to live without money. But Jack's eyes were cold as he looked at Jessie, whose eyes were moist and she was clinging to him. Jessie must have finally realized the situation she was in. The look of despair on her face was clear. I shouldn't have told Martin who his real father was. That's not the point. If you had raised Martin properly as his mother, none of this would have happened. You deserved it. Jessie stared at the ground for a while, then suddenly looked up and this time rubbed up against me. Well, yes. Could you ask Max not to take custody? Please. No matter who gets custody of Martin, Jack's heart has already left you. Don't you understand that? I didn't want to talk any more with Jessie, who saw Martin as just a tool until the very end. You have no right to call yourself Martin's mother. At best, you regret what you have done. I left Jessie, who nodded in disappointment at these words, and left her house with my husband, taking Martin with me. Jessie was then divorced by Jack and thrown out without a penny. She then asked for $3 million in alimony for deceiving Martin that he was Jack's child and for cheating on him. Max also said he would charge $600 per month for child support until Martin was an adult. Once Jessie was dumped by Jack, none of her former lovers came around, and she had to start working at night to pay the alimony. After Max returned to Japan, custody of my grandson was safely returned to him. Every day I am happy to see Martin happily going to school and happily talking about the day's events. We will continue to live together as a family, watching Martin's growth by our side. What did you think of this story? Please subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.